welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is the top 10 cards from Innistrad Midnight Hunt for Commander. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good set for Commander. I probably could have done a top 20 list if I really stretched it out. You know, I think there is definitely some more usable cards in the format that aren't on this list, but I wanted to keep it to the stuff that I thought would definitely see play in the format. So I'm going to start off with an honorable mention. Moon Silver Key, 2-mana artifact. Pay 1 and tap, sacrifice Moon Silver Key. Search your library for an artifact card with a mana ability or a basic land card. Reveal it. Put it into your hand, then shuffle. You know, I just don't know what to make of this card. I went over it and over it. I know it's going to see play in the format for sure, right? This is a way to mana fix. If you're in a color that doesn't mana fix very well, it also can go get your Soul Ring if you want, right? It can go get your Mana Crypt. It's great that way as well. So for that reason, I know it's definitely going to see play in the format. How much play? I don't know. Honestly, I'm looking at this card and I'm thinking I'm probably not going to put it in any decks, but I think it's definitely going to see some play because it is good in a color that doesn't mana fix very well. You can go get that basic land, or you can just go get that mana rock that you want, right? But coming in at number 10, Slaughter Specialist, 1 and a black, Vampire Warrior, 3/3. So right out of the gate, a 3/3 for 2 mana is pretty darn good. However, when Slaughter Specialist enters the battlefield, each opponent creates a 1/1 white human creature token. So you're giving each of your opponents a 1/1. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Slaughter Specialist. So right out of the gate, this is a fantastic card if you want to be giving your opponent's creatures, right? This is an auto included in a Griswold deck, I think for sure. This is going to go in every Griswold deck. This is great in any deck where you want your opponents to be having creatures, and I've talked about this a lot with cards like Maga Infestation, for example, where it's really, really good when your deck is relying on your opponent to be having creatures, like in a Mathis deck, for example. Mathis doesn't do a whole lot if your opponents don't have any creatures, right? So it's really great there, and only 2 mana to give all your opponents a creature can be great. And then that second ability of whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter at it, also works in a whole lot of decks, right? There's a ton of decks out there that want your opponent's creatures to be dying all the time and then taking advantage of it. So I think this fits in a ton of decks. Coming in at number 9, Triskaidekaphile. I think I got that right. 1 and a blue, 1/3 human wizard. You have no maximum hand size at the beginning of your upkeep. If you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. And you can pay 3 and a blue and draw a card. So I obviously got to give this a mention, right? It's a win con. It is a new win con that can be used in the format very easily. Like, I don't know how often people are going to try to pull this off in other formats, but in Commander, this doesn't seem that difficult. Having exactly 13 cards in your hand on your upkeep, you know, I have a feeling this is going to be a card that people are really going to start stuffing in their decks to try to use it to win. You know, in a deck where you're already drawing lots of cards, it's an easy fit to throw it in there. In a deck where you want to have lots of those spellbook, you know, you have no maximum hand size type of effects, it's a great fit in there. I made a hand size matters deck where this definitely would slot into very easily. Not hard to get 13 cards in your hand in Commander, so I definitely think people are going to be putting this in a lot of decks as an alt win con for their deck. Coming in at number 8, Outland Liberator. 1 and a green, human werewolf, 2/2. Pay 1, sacrifice Outland Liberator, destroy target artifact or enchantment, and it has Daybound. So already this is a very playable card in Commander, I think. Just the 2 mana 2/2 that you can sacrifice, destroy an artifact or enchantment, that's great. You know, Kozilek Pride Mage is a card that people put in a lot of decks. Viridian Zealot is another card that this is just straight up better than. If this card was just that, I would definitely put it in my Pharika deck because I have Viridian Zealot and a lot of cards like that where I want to sacrifice them to put them into my graveyard. But of course, because it's a werewolf, it has a flip side. Frenzied Trapbreaker, 3/3 werewolf, has the same ability of pay 1, sacrifice Frenzied Trapbreaker, destroy target artifact or enchantment, but also whenever Frenzied Trapbreaker attacks, destroy target artifact or enchantment defending player controls. That's really good. So worst case scenario, I can attack with my Frenzied Trapbreaker, destroy an artifact or enchantment that defending player controls, and if they have a blocker, I can just respond and sacrifice it to destroy another artifact or enchantment. So I'm getting 2 artifacts and enchantments. Worst case scenario. And flipping this guy is incredibly easy. I mean, obviously this is going to go in a werewolf deck for sure, but the daybound part, flipping this to the other side, all you have to do is just not cast spells on your turn, right? The daybound, nightbound thing works a little bit differently than the original werewolf stuff does. If a player casts no spells during their own turn, it becomes night next turn. So all you have to do is just forego casting spells on one of your turns, and this will flip over. And I just really think you can just go to town with that Frenzied Trap Breaker. Just every time it attacks, you destroy an artifact or enchantment. That's fantastic. Coming in at number 7, Sludge Monster. 3 blue, 5/5 horror. When Sludge Monster enters the battlefield or attacks, put a slime counter on up to one target creature. Non-horror creatures with slime counters on them lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 2/2. I really like this card in Commander for a number of reasons. First of all, it has that ETB attack ability, right? So you can reuse it a lot. As soon as it comes into play, you get to use that ability. When it attacks, you get to use it again. You can just start putting slime counters on all your opponent's creatures and just turning them into 2/2s with no abilities. But mostly what makes this card great is it shuts off people's commanders, right? This is one of the ways where if your opponent has a commander that's really, really powerful, like a Muldrotha, for example, you put a slime counter on it, turns it into a 2/2, and it has no abilities. So now it's up to your opponent to either get your Sludge Monster off the battlefield or get their own commander off the battlefield so that they can recast it. So it's a really fun, interesting card, but particularly I like it because of its ability to shut off people's commanders. Coming in at number 6, Ghoulish Procession. 1 and a black enchantment. Whenever one or more non-token creatures die, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. This ability triggers only once each turn. This card is just fantastic. I don't know. I don't see anyone else talking about it. Looks like it's only about 75 cents right now. Obviously in any deck where you're doing zombies, where you're doing sacrificing, again, you want your opponent's creatures to die, I think it fits. But you could just throw this in any deck. This is a 2-mana enchantment that I can throw down, and whenever any creature dies, a non-token creature, any player's creature, I get a 2/2 zombie. That seems pretty good. Sure, it has Decayed, but especially in a deck, an Aristocrats deck or any other deck where I want to be having those token creatures that I can do stuff with, it's fantastic. You can easily spit out one of these zombie tokens on every player's turn, right? On your turn, it's going to be real easy. On your opponent's turn, all you have to do is sacrifice a creature during their turn or kill one of their creatures during their turn, something like that. Creatures are dying all over the place in a Commander game already, so you could just throw this down and without putting any effort at all, it's just going to be spitting out tokens all game. And it's one of those cards that sort of flies under the radar, and I don't think your opponents are going to pay much attention to. I think if you threw this down on turn 2 in a Commander game, you would just get an incredible amount of value out of it. Coming in at number 5, the Meathook Massacre. And this is a great card. The art definitely doesn't leave much up to the imagination there. So X, black, legendary enchantment. When the Meathook Massacre enters the battlefield, each creature gets -X until end of turn. So very unique in that it's an enchantment that's giving -X, right? It's an enchantment board wipe. Also, though, whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain 1 life. So it has that sort of Blood Artist Zulaport Cutthroat type of effect, except maybe a little bit in reverse, where it's a creature you control dying, each opponent loses 1 life. When an opponent creature dies, you gain 1 life. So it's sort of separated those abilities. So right out of the gate, this is again, a Zulaport Cutthroat, that Aristocrats type of effect that's going to go in all of those decks. Because it's an enchantment, that makes it even better, right? So now with all the board wipes, you don't have to worry about this going away. You can just play this for 2 mana. Black and a black, you throw it down, that's it. And now it's doing that Blood Artist Aristocrat type effect for you. But then on top of that, if you want to throw a bunch of mana into it and turn it into a board wipe, it's that as well. I just think this card's so fantastic. It really could go in any deck. You don't have to be playing Aristocrats. I mean, whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. That's always good. Gaining life whenever your opponent's creatures die, that's always good, right? And the fact that you can turn it into a board wipe is fantastic. I really like this card a lot. Coming in at number 4, and this is 3 black cards in a row. Black really, really made out well in this set. I mean, I guess that's not surprising considering the theme. Infernal Grasp, 1 and a black instant. Destroy target creature. You lose 2 life. That's it. And I got to give this card a mention because this is the new normal, right? This is the new bar. Wizards of the Coast has now set a precedence here, sort of, right? This is a 2-mana instant that destroys any creature, no restrictions at all, and you just lose 2 life, right? Losing 2 life in Commander is basically nothing. So this is 2 mana, destroy a creature at instant speed. That is quite the precedence that Wizards of the Coast has set, right? We can't go back from this. This card just supplants so many other cards, right? If you have Go for the Throat in your deck, you're going to take it out and put this in. If you have Hero's Downfall, I think you'll probably take it out and put this in. You know, this just supplants so many other mono black creature removal staples in the format. If anyone out there is still playing Murder, definitely won't be now. You know, they've just set the bar. This is the new bar of, you know, basically a 3 mana spell that kills a creature, or even a 2 mana spell that has restrictions is just not going to be that good anymore, right? Because now we have a 2 mana instant speed spell that just destroys any creature. Coming in at number 3, and of course I'm going to have a lot of removal at the top of this list, Vanquish the Horde. 6 white, so 8 mana, that's a lot. Sorcery, this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. Destroy all creatures. So, you know, again, I don't know how much buzz this has been getting. I think it's definitely going to be a staple in the format, no question. Maybe it's even the best white board wipe in the format now. You know, I talked about this when I did my video about what white does best, and I was talking about how in every new set it seems like white's coming out with a new fantastic board wipe. I mean, this might be the best. This might be the best. I mean, likely you're going to have 6 creatures on the battlefield, right? Costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. So if there's 6 creatures on the battlefield, this is 2 white mana. Destroy all creatures. That's incredible. In a commander game, doesn't take much to have 6 creatures on the battlefield. Even if this costs 3, it's really, really good. And as I've discussed before, you know, I want to get value, right? In that same video, I talked about how card advantage isn't just drawing cards. It's also I'm casting 1 spell and getting rid of 10 or 12 of my opponent's things. That's also card advantage, right? So for me, when I cast a board wipe, I want to hit a whole bunch of different creatures. So if I got this in my deck, and I'm probably going to put it in a few of my decks, I'm probably not going to cast it unless it costs just white, no white. So 2 white mana, destroy all creatures obviously is incredible. Is this the best board wipe in the format now? Maybe. I don't know. I still really like Austere Command because of the versatility of it. Man, it's getting to the point now where I might have to push Cleansing Nova out of my decks to make room for stuff like this. Really, really good. Coming in at number 2, Augur of Autumn. 1 green, human druid, 2/3. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play land cards from the top of your library. And it has Coven. As long as you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, you may cast creature spells from the top of your library. So I'm sure there's probably a few people that are going to have this at the top of their list. It was really difficult for me not to put this at number 1. It's going to be a staple in the format, no question. Is it going to supplant Oracle of Moldiah? I don't know. You know, for me, I think this is better than Oracle of Moldiah. I don't love the reveal, right? You know, I talked about this in a video about how I'd never play Oracle of Moldiah because I hate my opponent seeing the top of my library. You're basically just revealing every card you draw every turn, so that your opponents know exactly what's in your hand. That's a huge disadvantage. They sort of got rid of that, right? They don't do that wording anymore. The wording of play with the top card of your library revealed, like on Oracle, like on Courser of Crewfix, has now been replaced with you may look at the top card of your library at any time, which is way, way better. You know, that ability on its own, just being able to look at the top card of your library whenever you want, is a huge advantage if you're playing in an Amareth deck or any other deck where you want to be looking at the top of your library, where you're playing off the top of your library. Playing lands from the top of your library is also fantastic. I think Oracle of Moldiah might still be better in a landfall deck because it does let you play that extra land. But any other scenario, I think Augur of Autumn is better. Also, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, you get to cast creature spells from the top of your library, which is super fantastic. In a creature heavy deck, which most green decks are, shouldn't be too hard to get that. Definitely a really great card. Definitely going to be a staple in the format for a long, long time. I'm sure we're going to see it in the format a lot, though. I didn't put it at number 1, though, because my number 1 is Fateful Absence. And I know people might think I'm crazy for putting this as number 1, but, you know, these lists do tend to be a little biased towards what I'm going to be putting in all of my decks, and I am going to be putting this in all of my decks. 1 and a white, instant, destroy target creature or planeswalker. Its controller investigates. So again, just like I said about Infernal Grasp, about setting the bar, that's sort of what Wizards of the Coast is doing here. I mean, this is huge. 2 mana instant, destroy a creature or a planeswalker. No restrictions. That is really, really good. I mean, its controller investigates is almost nothing. You know, it's not even draw a card, right? If you look at Baleful Mastery, which I sort of gushed over that card on my Strixhaven list, I thought it was really good. These cards are very comparable. So Baleful Mastery does have that 4 mana option, but if you pay the 2 mana, you're going to exile a creature or planeswalker and an opponent draws a card. Here, they don't even get to draw a card. I mean, I know with Baleful Mastery, you get to pick the opponent that draws, so maybe that's good. But here they don't even get to draw. If this card was destroy target creature or planeswalker, its controller draws a card, it would still be a really good card. They don't even get that. They only get to investigate, so now they have to invest their own mana if they want to draw a card. I mean, this is just a Commander staple, for sure, for a long time. You know, it's comparable to Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares, obviously. It's not quite that good. You know, those cards are 1 mana and they exile. The downside with Fateful Absence, though, is less, though. I would rather have my opponents investigate than go get a land out of their library, you know, so, but I still think Path to Exile is probably better than this. Nevertheless, fantastic card. One of the best removal spells in the format, I think, already. Being able to hit a Planeswalker as well, I really, really like that versatility in a Commander game. I think you're 90% of the time going to hit a creature with this, but I love that versatility of if my opponent has a troublesome Planeswalker, I can destroy it as well. Definitely going to be putting this card in a lot of decks. I think it's likely that I put every single card on this list in at least one of my decks. Some really, really great ones here. Overall, a pretty darn good set, I think, for Commander. Again, with these standard sets, I don't expect them to be fantastic for Commander. I expect them to just be okay. And if we can have at least 10 cards out of that set that now become very playable cards in Commander, I'm totally okay with that. That's great. But what do you guys think? What are your favorite cards from this set? What did I miss, possibly, that should have got a mention? I think there was definitely a few other cards that could have got a mention that I was like, yeah, they're okay, I guess. I think there for sure is a lot of other cards in the set that are going to see play in the format. These, to me, I think were the best. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.